Stocks. Yesterday, of course, things fizzled out. Can we hold on today? So the first rates are on your screen, 25,067.73. That's a Nifty with about 1/3% gain. The Bank Nifty is up about 1/3%, 51,150. The Sensex is up 1/3, 81,733. And you got the mid-cap index, which is up about 0.65%, 59,480 on the mid-cap index. The heat map will come up on your screen, and then we'll look at individual stocks in terms of how they're starting with. On your screen are some of the losers, and I can spot a Tata or two there. I think Lever, SBI, some of the others. It's overwhelmingly green though, so I think about 4 or 5 names are down in the red, at least at the word go, and everything else on the Nifty heat map is starting the day higher. Look at the advanced decline as well. 1,400 stocks, 1,450 stocks are up, and about 250 stocks are lower. So broader markets, at least right at 9:15, are looking pretty good. Surabhi.
Okay, looking at some of the individual movers and shakers, the leaders include the likes of L&T, NTPC, Hindalco, BEL. These are the early gainers on the screen, about 1% a piece on each of these counters. Bharti Airtel, JSW Steel, of course, which has been cooling off last couple of sessions, moving up. So basically, the metals downtrade is reversing, and you've got two of the giants, Hindalco and JSW Steel, right on top. There's some buying in Power Grid, Coal India, BPCL. So the PSU space seems to be alive and kicking as well. On the downside, there's Tata Motors with about 1.5% cut, Adani Enterprises, Apollo Hospitals, Infosys, and actually some of the large cap heavyweights, HUL, Reliance, SBI, they're all piled up at the bottom, preventing a bigger move on the Nifty. Let's see if that changes. But as of now, a steady 80-point move on the Nifty.
Okay, all right. Well, let's keep an eye out on the broader markets as well. A few stocks are moving very, very well. Z Enterprises, that stock is up and about in today's trading session. So big move is what we're seeing out there. Z-Learn, it's only an 11 rupee stock. Yesterday it was up 10%. Massive volumes at upper circuit. So that one as well is up close to around 5% in today's trade. GMR Airports, I think there was a Jeffries note that came in earlier today. So that stock as well has opened up with a gain of around 2%. Top volume mover out there. Tata Chemicals, we had highlighted the stock earlier today. You know, the stock is up close to around 4%. It was up close to around 2%. It's in the F&O ban. It's seeing a big amount of delivery-based buying. That's one of the top performing stocks today, flying away as we speak. On the flip side, a few stocks that are pulling back a little bit. Torrent Power after yesterday's big move, that's cooling off a little bit. Avenue Supermarts as well, cooling off a little bit. And you have Rain Industries. That stock is now up close to around 6%. So big move on that one. Oberoi Realty as well, it spiked up in the final hour of trade yesterday. Today it's building onto this gain, so up close to around 2%.
Well, Tata Chemicals with the 4.5% pop, by the way, is the biggest volume-led gainer up on your screen. So that's a 50 rupee move coming through, and 1151. I mean, you know, in relative senses, it has been a bit of an underperformer over the last 3 years. Has been around that 1,100 rupee mark for, I think, since 2022 or so. But there is volumes. I mean, 2 million shares. When the last time you saw those kind of volumes, right at the word go, but you got that this morning. Mazgaon Dock is coming up at the number 2 spot in terms of volume. So 4232 on Mazgaon Dock. So that's the other one. There is Dhani Services. Don't see this at all, but volumes are there. So we're putting this out. 5% on Dhani. JP Power is up about 3%, 23. Again, it's led by huge volumes. There is Zentech. Zentech is up 6%, 1867 on Zentech. Again, tremendous volumes. PMC Infra is up 5.5% and very large volumes. Garden Reach Shipbuilders is up about 3.5%. So yeah, I mean, there are a bit of some of these, at least 2 shipbuilders which are there, Mazgaon and GRSE so far. Shakti Pumps was up 5%, it's up another 3 today. So heading back to its recent highs again, 48.30 on that one. Viatech Vabag is coming up with about a 4% pop. So there is that as well. Market breadth still holding on easy with about 4:1, all in favor of advances at this point in time. Bajaj Housing Finance has had a 2-day 13-14% move. It's cooling it today. Just a 1% pullback. Adani Enterprises is down 1% as the QIP. Suzlon is down 1%, had a big 8% surge yesterday. And, you know, RITES was another one of those large movers, down about 2%. So some of these are just sort of day-on-day small pullbacks that we are really seeing at this point.
You know, I'm looking at the biggest moves that are actually coming in from stocks that are in news. So the gain on Rain Industries is now 8%. I think they're looking at some global alliances on the graphite electrode side. PNC Infra and GR Infra, both of those are reacting to order wins. And it's a large one for PNC, the value is going over 2,000 crores. So that's one stock in focus as well. Aside of that, there's a very clear and distinct PSU play in the market. The shipbuilders are absolutely leading it. But a lot of other names like RCF, look at RCF, about 6% up on RCF right now. So in general, the PSU space is up and about. Some more names coming up on the screen now. NCC, for instance, is also managing about a 3% up move. So look at NTPC. I mean, it's actually the Nifty leader as we speak. Coal India is climbing higher. So it's turning out to be a big, big PSU morning as well. But I think before we, carry on with the market conversations, we have Reema joining in. She's looking at some of the standout brokerage reports of the morning. Reema, which one is it?
Well, I'm looking at JP Morgan on Vodafone Idea because after 4 years of being underweight on Vodafone Idea, JP Morgan today has upgraded it to a neutral with a target price of 10 rupees. The key thesis is that after the unfavorable AGR ruling in the Supreme Court, Vodafone Idea will have to take more tariff hikes. So the earlier expectation was that there will be one tariff hike in maybe 2 years. Now they're saying expect a 15% tariff hike in FY26 and FY27, which already follows a tariff hike that we had a couple of months back. Second assumption is out of their total AGR dues that the company, AGR and spectrum dues that the company owes to the government will convert close to about 29,000 crore into equity. And according to the SEBI formula, it should happen at a price of 10 rupees. So 10 rupees becomes a floor price in a way for Vodafone Idea. Currently, the stock has dipped below that, but they believe that that's not sustainable, and therefore they've gone and upgraded it, and their target price stands at 10 rupees. But it's a neutral rating because the company, JP Morgan says that the company is still in the early stages of proving its strategy, that they will be able to arrest subscriber losses, that their capex rollout is going to help. So they're saying that till we see the proof of this, strategy being successful, that's the time when they will turn constructive. As of now, it's a neutral rating with a target price of 10 rupees. Back to you.
All right, Reema. Thank you so much for that. But indeed, those are some pretty big assumptions they're working with, right? Because two of the big assumptions that report is making, one is that there will be some aggressive tariff hikes by Vodafone, and second is that the government is going to convert more of the dues into equity. Pretty big assumptions to make. Considering that for tariff hikes, I guess the biggies, the giants have to move, right? I mean, unless there is something from Jio or Airtel, I mean, I don't know if Voda alone can push this through.
Absolutely. And, those are things we'll need to sort of keep an eye out on. The market, by the way, is still up about 60-odd points. TCS numbers, by the way, are today. And, of course, because of the demise of Mr. Tata, there was a press conference which was lined up. There were interviews which were lined up with the management, as always happens. I think those will not happen as we understand it. But, Reema, tell us a quick bit, and of course, some of the changes there and the preview itself. What should we expect?
Well, for starters, as you pointed out, no press conference at 5:30 p.m. today and no interview tomorrow, which we typically do with the management. So that stands cancelled. As of now, the earnings release and even the analyst call, which is scheduled at 7 p.m., stands on track. Now, in terms of expectation, expect about a 2% dollar revenue growth. In constant currency terms, it should be a 1.2% revenue growth. The kicker in the revenue will come in from the BSNL deal. According to Kotak, it could add about $55 million. So that's on the top line. On margins, if you remember, Q1 was the wage hike quarter. Therefore, margins got depressed. Now, typically, in Q2, we see a pickup in margins, close to about 100 basis points. That always happens. But this time, that could be absent. So expect a pickup in improvement in margins, but the improvement could be about 20 basis points according to our poll. And the reason is that this BSNL contract, according to analysts, is coming in on lower margins. But, the range for even margins is very, very high this time around. So the street is a bit... it's hard to get a consensus there. What the company told us last time in an interview is that FY25 will be better than FY24, but it's too early to say if the growth momentum seen last quarter is sustainable. The aspirational margin range of 26 to 28% remains sustainable. What will you watch? Deal wins. Europe, I heard, is quite challenging, and that could depress, the company's financials and the industry per se in the current quarter. Early indications of, 2025 budget with the Fed rate cuts. Is that going to help? Can budgets pick up? Discretionary spend, and even the AI and Gen AI pipeline, the number which the company shares every quarter. Back to you.
All right, Reema, thank you very much for that. So that's TCS and what we should expect. We have Gautam Duggar, who's with us. He's a market master of the day, head of research at Motilal Oswal Financial Services. Gautam, good to have you with us here. Thank you very much for joining us. Gautam, I think I was looking at the earnings preview report for the season for Q2. for the full year FY25, I think you've brought down earnings expectations, EPS for Nifty, quite sharply. Correct me if I'm wrong, from about, what, 1320 to 1280 or so?
Yeah, hi, Prashant. Good morning. Thanks for having me. Yes, your conclusion is correct. We have brought down the estimates by 4%. So there has been a 4% earnings cut for both FY25 and roughly 3.5% for FY26. So we were at about 1115 and 1315. It stands revised to 1070 and about 1270. So essentially FY25 earnings now will be 7%, which will be the first year of a single-digit growth in last 5 years. So there is definitely a moderation out there, but there is a nuance to it. If you look at the earnings cut of 4%.
Gautam, Gautam, you said first time single-digit growth in
5 years.
5 years. That's what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
So first time single-digit growth in 5 years. So what has happened, Prashant, is there has been a sharp cut in commodities. So for example, out of the 4% earnings cut that we have done in Nifty FY25, 80% of that 4% cut has come from 4 companies: Reliance, ONGC, Tata Steel, and JSW Steel. They account for 3.2% of that 4% cut. What it means is that the rest of the 46 companies put together have seen less than 1% earnings cut. More importantly, the broader coverage universe that we have, X of Nifty, which is about 225 stocks, they've seen less than 1.5% earnings cut. But the earnings cut look exaggerated because the 4 biggies in the Nifty have seen a slightly larger cut. So for example, Singapore GRM has been flat quarter to quarter. So Reliance has seen some cut in standalone, some cut in retail. And then you had a similar cut in Tata Steel and JSW Steel because the commodity prices for the quarter were a bit low. And at the same time, some of the expected recovery we were expecting in Tata Steel profitability in Europe, that got pushed out further. So yes, there is a cut. Yes, there is a moderation, but it's not a broad-based moderation. There are 3-4 companies which are driving large part of this cut.
Hi, morning. Just to go back, so you're saying 7% earnings growth in FY25, right?
Yeah.
That number really stands out because, last we spoke to several people on the street. I think the consensus was still in double digits. Some people were still talking about 13% and then talking about possible downgrade. So you're already, below street in terms of the consensus, right? Because yes, I don't know at these prices, at around even at 25,500 on the Nifty, I don't know if this 7% number is already baked in. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so Surbhi, look at it this way. We were at 1140 about 6 months back, right? So we had come down by 2% already in July. From there, we have come down by another 4%. Let me also hasten to add that this is the first year where we have seen the magnitude of cuts being slightly larger, right? Because post-COVID, we are not used to earnings cut. In fact, FY22 had seen an earnings upgrade. FY24 had also seen a marginal earnings upgrade. So we had seen about 15% growth in 21. Then that got uplifted to 40% because of commodity spike in FY22. In 23 again was a down year with about 12% growth. Then 24 again, we saw 25% growth. And this year we are at about 7%. So every alternate year, we have seen some sort of a moderation in earnings. But quality of earnings is not getting deteriorated sharply, Surbhi, because the cut is coming from commodities. Do remember, when the earnings upgrade was led by commodities, market didn't give it too much of a credit. If you recall, FY22 Nifty earnings grew 37%. But X of commodities in FY22, the earnings were up only 21%. Right, so market didn't sharply re-rate in FY22. Similarly, I expect when the downgrade is led by commodities, I don't expect any disproportionate impact on Nifty per se. Yes, it does damage the headline numbers, but there is a lot of layers to that 7% growth.
All right. Gautam, so we've got that. The past quarter is going to be a little bit subdued, but you're saying that for FY26, we'll see high teens growth, which evens out things to some extent. What about your preference on sectors? Some of the financials, private financials in particular, valuation-wise, they're pretty well placed. And also, they've not performed as much as, say, some of those PSUs. So what's your top picks in sector-wise?
Definitely, Nigel. So if you see our model portfolio, we have made one big change this time. We've actually reduced the number of stocks in our portfolio from 38 to 31 and tried to increase weightages or concentrate our exposure in sectors and stocks where conviction levels are high. So one of the big changes we have done is we have taken private banks from underweight to overweight. Right? We've been underweight on private banks for the last 2.5 years, primarily owing to the underweight stance on HDFC Bank. Now we have made private banks overweight, where we have increased weight on ICICI, HDFC Bank, and introduced Kotak Bank in the model portfolio after a very long time. Right? So that's slightly bigger exposure there. Private bank becomes underweight. NBFC and diversified financials are also overweight. And also PSU banks are overweight. So all three segments of financials in our model portfolio are now overweight, and they are overweight with a chunky, 400, 500 bips overweight. So from 31% index weight, we are at 35% now. And secondly, on IT also, where we had turned overweight in July, this quarter we have further increased that overweight from 11 to 15%. So in 6 months, we have doubled our weight in IT from 8 to 11 in July and 11 to 15 in October now. Right, so these are two big sectors where we have raised our overweight stance substantially. Between the two of them, as you can calculate, this is 50% of our model portfolio now, BFSI plus IT.
Okay. So just to speak of IT in little more detail, Gautam, we're starting the season now with TCS, and I think what Rima was telling us, the expectations from TCS are actually of a slightly more sluggish quarter. I think the street is pitting higher hopes on Infosys this time around. How are you reading it? How are you reading it? How are you reading the trends? And I think there's some talk about while BFSI in the US is probably looking better, manufacturing in Europe, and we know, right, auto sales, we know what's happening with the auto sector in Europe. That is possibly a concern. Your thoughts?
So, Surbhi, yes, Infosys will post, our expectation is 3% QOQ constant currency growth. So amongst the large cap, that's why our preference is towards HCL Tech and Infosys. If you see the composition of our model portfolio in IT, we have the highest overweight on HCL Tech for last 2 years running. And then we have Infosys in the large cap. And in mid cap, we continue to hold persistent and now have added Coforge. So as far as this quarter is concerned, we are definitely expecting some improvement in the commentary on IT sector. If discretionary demand were to revive, if not now, after another 3-4 months, I think Infosys will stand to be the biggest beneficiary. HCL Tech definitely has improved its free cash flow characteristics over the last 2 years, which is why we are giving it a slight premium to Infosys on valuations. Net, we think valuations on IT sector are at a stage where risk reward is very favorable. And as far as mid cap in IT is concerned, the growth continues to outperform large cap. If you look at last 10-15 years of IT companies and compare the behavior of large and mid cap IT on earnings growth and valuations, you would see that every alternate 2-3 years, the mid cap IT used to go in premium and then fluctuate with discount to large cap. This time around, the premium of mid cap IT has lasted versus large cap IT for almost 4 years now. And one of the big drivers for that premium sustaining for so long is the continued outperformance on growth of mid-cap IT versus large-cap IT. As far as we are concerned, we've made it much bigger overweight now with both top-down as well as bottom-up perspective.
Okay. All right, Gautam, we will leave the conversation there for today. Thank you very much for joining, and we hope to keep getting you as the season progresses. Let's see how the earnings sort of finally play out and whether they can meet the lowered expectations that we're going with right now. Let's move on then. We have Baba Kalyani, Chairman and Managing Director of Bharat Forge, now joining in, as we have been getting many voices from India Inc. to celebrate and, of course, mourn the loss of one of the tallest leaders of India Inc., celebrate his legacy, but at the same time somber, because we, of course, will dearly and deeply miss him. Mr. Kalyani, thank you very much for joining in. Let's start by understanding your recollections, any meetings, any interactions, something that stands out in your memory when it comes to Mr. Tata.
First of all, let me just say one sentence that Ratan Tata really brought India together in terms of India's industry. He created a vision for India to move forward, and that's the respect he gained amongst the entire industry. As far as personally I'm concerned, I've known him for many years, even prior to 1991 when he took over as chairman of Tata Sons. And I've had the opportunity to meet him personally many times for advice on our business. And he always was very open, very frank, very genuine in terms of talking to me, in terms of giving us advice. I remember many instances when we have flown together. We went to Washington together on an Air India flight along with the Prime Minister's delegation for the 2006 nuclear talks. So I have had the fortune of spending a lot of time with him. I think India will miss him greatly. He was somebody who built a strong and positive brand for India. His greatest quality was his values, which put people first. And there are multiple actions which demonstrated this, but the most demonstrable action was during 26/11, and what he did and how the group took care of their employees of the Taj and their families. A great man. India will miss him. We will all miss him personally, but he has left a tremendous legacy for all of us.
I think those are visuals also, Mr. Kalyani. Hi, good morning. Those are visuals also coming in from the from Mr. Tata's residence, where I think there's a small ceremony being held. They will move to the NCPA, where his body will be kept all day today, as people will pour in to pay their respects. And I think that's what's happening with the visuals which are coming in. Our colleague Yash is there, and we'll go to him as well. Mr. Kalyani, when you're heading that large, I mean, the largest industrial group in the country, right? Big capital allocation decisions, I guess, would be something which occupy a fair amount of your time. As a business leader yourself, sir, how would you remember him in those respects? Because you have to make the big decisions, and he did, right? He did those sort of big acquisitions in the auto space and the steel space back in 2007-8.
This is where I used to go to him for advice. He was very clear in his thoughts. He always believed that Indian companies need to go global. He always believed that India has the capability to be a big industrial nation. And I think that was the direction at least he put me in. And yes, today we are going through some massive transformation in every business because the whole technology scenario has changed very dramatically. And technology changed with the advent of artificial intelligence, digital technology, and everything else is a very different ball game today than what it is. So when you look at capital allocation today, you can at best figure out what you're going to do for the next 5 years. But we are very clear that we need to grow faster than what the nation is growing. So I think the opportunities in India are very great. There's always a target that has already been set for us by the Honorable Prime Minister. And I think every group, and Tata Group is leading in all these fields, whether it's semiconductors, electronics, all the stuff they are doing. And we, in our own way, are doing what we are good at.
Good morning, Mr. Kalyani, and good to see you, Ben, as always. You briefly mentioned about interacting with Mr. Tata and also reaching out for advice at times. What stood out for me was ethics over profitability. And he marked India's ascendancy into the globe as well. Give us a couple of instances as well where you'd have reached out to him and, taken the next decision.
Well, it's very difficult to remember each instance, but I know a couple of years ago, I went to his house because those days he was not going to office very regularly. So I used to go to his house in South Bombay. And, whenever I requested for time, he would definitely give time. He would listen. He would give advice. Sometimes he would not agree with what I said, which was fine. I always treated him as an elder statesman of the industry, somebody whose advice was very, very useful for people like us. I've known Bombay House for the last 50 years. My father used to know J.R.D. Tata. I used to know Suman Mulgaonkar. That time, Mr. Ratan Tata was not part of the Tata Sons system. But, that whole culture there and the way the Tata culture is embodied. I think Ratan Tata just took it a couple of steps ahead. And, the nation will miss him. We will all miss him.
No, absolutely. Mr. Kalyani, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the somber day as we remember Mr. Tata. Appreciate you taking out the time and being with us here on the channel. Once again, I just want to point out to our viewers that those are visuals of the journey from Mr. Tata's residence to NCPA, the body will be kept at NCPA for people to be able to pay their tributes, last respects all day there. All right, let's welcome in Madhu Khela now. He's founder of MK Ventures. Madhu, good to have you with us here. Thanks for your time. I mean, we've all kind of, since as long as I guess we've all tracked markets and looked at corporate groups, Mr. Tata has been right there, as a leading light of industry. How would you remember Mr. Tata and what kind of stood out for you over the years?
Hi, Prashant. First of all, deep condolences to the family. And I would say it's a big loss to the nation that we lost a leader like him today. Tata Group has been really like a visionary group in India. And they have not only stood for creating wealth, but making sure that they do it really with highest amount of ethical standards. They do it for the whole society, right? It is nothing personal about the group. And they are like equal to the brand India. And I don't know of any other industrial group which has dedicated themselves so much to the nation. And Ratan Tata led the group from the front. He took the India brand out of India. He made a global brand out of Tata Group in various countries, in various businesses. And I think his life was exemplary, something which is very, very inspiring.
Yes, absolutely, Madhu. Hi. We're seeing visuals on our screen actually right now. Mr. Tata's mortal remains are going to be moved to the NCPA here in Mumbai. And then, of course, it's open for the public to pay respects, I think, 3:30 onwards. And he will be, of course, accorded a state funeral. There's a 1 day of state mourning as well that has been declared. We will probably see a lot of dignitaries attending. Mr. Amit Shah has already, I think, confirmed his presence. Business leaders have been pouring in at the hospital itself at Breach Candy through the night. And of course, the presence of the business world, of course, is going to be absolutely no surprise. But one imagines that perhaps there will be an outpouring of emotion even for the common man, because Mr. Tata was one of the such tall leaders that the businesses that he built touched many, many, many millions and billions of Indian lives all around. So you can see there, I think the procession, the distance from his residence in Colaba to NCPA is not very large or not very big, but of course it will probably take some time. And then, of course, the proceedings will continue over there. And of course, we are going to keep you updated and we'll keep bringing you up to speed. Madhu, just to go back to the legacy now, obviously the group has already put in place a succession plan. Each of the individual businesses are being managed by professional boards and professional management. What next, you think, in terms of a pivot for the group, as it, of course, remains deeply entrenched in the values that Mr. Ratan Tata leaves behind?
I think Mr. Chandra has done a phenomenal job of taking the legacy forward. And, what is most important is, we believe that there is so much corruption in India. But what Tata Group has been able to showcase, or just as an example, that even in a country like this, you can have the highest level of ethical standard, you can work for the entire society, and you can still be the largest group, you can still create the largest amount of wealth for stakeholders while making sure that you are very fair to the government, you're very fair to the society, you're very fair to the employees, you're very fair to people by and large. And what is most touching that, they have done it selflessly. Even Mr. Ratan Tata did it selflessly. To best of my understanding, the entire group's wealth is meant for society's goodness and for charitable purposes. So that is what will live like an example for many, many decades and maybe generations to come. And people will get a lot of inspiration from his life.
Hi, Madhu. Good morning. For me, I came from a home that was brought up on a Tata salary because my dad was at Tata's for 35 to 40 years old. So for me, that's, my connection with the Tata group. But Madhu, what was your learnings? You've been a big investor. Now you're wearing the hat of an entrepreneur as well. And Mr. Tata, he fended off that Ford bid, when they tried to come ahead and put in a bid for Tata Motors. And years later, he went and took over JLR. In this entrepreneurial journey, what were the key learnings that you would have?
So, Nigel, more than the entrepreneurial journey, let me talk, what I feel from inside today. That, even in my life, I could walk a few steps. He ran the full marathon. If I walk a few steps, of the path which people like Ratan Tata have shown, I think I will feel more fulfilled going forward. And maybe we can do our bit for the society by and large, which somewhere we have started. But hopefully we get inspirations from people like Mr. Tata and really do it well. What the two things which stands out from a business perspective, he truly believed in his own conviction. So whenever you are convinced about an idea, like really Tata Group growing global, at the time when he took that bet of Tata Group growing global, no one in India was talking about it. He not only took one company, but he took several of Tata companies out of India and established a brand. Obviously, there were, ups and downs in the journey, but he truly believed in his conviction. He truly believed in idea that India should be and Tata Group should be a well-known brand. And second, I would say are the ethical standards which they have set for doing business. So those are two things which really, really stands out for me.
Okay, just pointing out while we continue our coverage, just an eye on the screen as well. The Nifty is just about 30 points up from an opening gap of around 80-85 points. Now, again, the gains are dwindling, very gently so, but there is a bit of a cool-off. Mid-cap index is relatively better off, 0.5% up. The bank Nifty is looking much, much better, but it is the Nifty that's cooling off. Let's just quickly look at the reasons behind it. If you look at the Nifty, well, some of the big names would be Infosys, ICICI Bank, Lever. Then there is Cipla and Trent. These are some of the names on the weaker side of the screen today.
Okay, Madhu, I know maybe today is not the day to go deep dive into markets, but with you. But since we have you, if I can sort of ask you a quick question on markets as well, what's your sense? We had last week was a complete washout, right? Big selling from FIIs. What is your own sense? Have we the low that we saw day before? Is that going to hold? Will we revisit it in the near future? What's the trajectory from here as you see it?
Prashant, you are very good at it. So predicting the recent lows and whether it will break out or not. But what I would say that there are three things which market was worried about on the recent correction. One was the geopolitical situation, that this Israel war should not escalate beyond a point. Second was money shifting away from China. And third was some kind of a political uncertainty if BJP were to lose all the states. So that last point has come as, I would say, the biggest sigh of relief for the market, if I can put it like that. The Haryana election victory, in my opinion, is a big thing from a political stability perspective and from the continuing good work perspective. And I do not feel that the money shifting in China is going to be a long-term issue. If at all, if China really gets revived, the money will come into emerging markets And if we get money into emerging markets, India will get a disproportionate share of the same money. So I'm not worried. Just to say, I think we are in a really good wicket, Prashant. As always, I remain optimistic about the long-term future of the country and long-term future of the stock market. You are seeing the way retail participation is increasing, and there is so much left out feeling, my friend. I can't tell you. I am sure in that even 500, 700 point decline, I don't know the exact number, but I'm being told mutual funds got thousands of crores on those 2 days by way of subscription from retail public. So till that time that is there, I don't think we are going to stop in a hurry or markets are going to correct significantly. Having said that, we have had a massive rally in the last 3-4 years, and there are a lot of returns which have got accumulated. This is time to be stock specific. This is time to, make doubly sure that you are in the right companies and the right sectors, and your homework is of top quality. And you are really putting money from a medium to long perspective and not thinking of 3-6 months.
Oh, absolutely, Madhu. That advice is well taken. So, to come back to the Tata Group, let me ask you a question right there. So, of course, the businesses are firing and they're very, very different and distinct. But if I were to ask you that from now, say, for the next decade, if you were to bet on the key businesses that would perhaps be the biggest wealth creators of the group, of the conglomerate, which ones would they be? Which companies would you back?
So, I would say that Mr. Chandra's leadership has proven to be really exemplary. A lot of group companies have done really, really well. So, if I have to bet only on one company, it will be Tata Motors.
Tata Motors, which is actually going through a sort of interesting, restructuring on its own. There will soon be a demerger. So elaborate on that. Why Tata Motors versus the rest?
I would say, because the transition to EV and they being having the technological edge of being able to spend billions of dollars in last 3-4 years to establish that platform, and Land Rover and Jaguar being a global brand now, I think they have a really, really long runway ahead. I miss Rakesh Bhaiya and really miss his conviction on this company. What a bet he took.
Okay, no, absolutely, and that's another sort of legendary figure that we all miss here as far as Dalal Street is concerned. Madhu, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us with your views and, of course, with your tribute to Mr. Ratan Tata on this somber day.
May rest in peace and you have a good way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, we're up 20 on the Nifty. We're just, already at least the first move has been a sell-off from the day's highest point. So look at that, 20 to 23 points is all that is left from the on the day. We'll take a quick commercial break here. There's more lined up on the other side as we continue to pay tribute to the business icon, Ratan Tata.
Welcome back. Well, let's document the journey of the Tata Groups, and Vinny's here to document the journey of Tata Motors under the leadership of Mr. Ratan Tata. Vinny?
Absolutely. It's been an interesting leadership over the years that we've seen. He took over charge of the Tata conglomerate group in 1991, and since then he's made a lot of changes and worked towards the betterment of most of the companies in the Tata group. Specifically today I'm going to talk about Tata Motors that he did. And interesting to see that, he actually was the original man who started Make in India, because he spearheaded the first designed and built in Indian car that was made in India. And this was the Indica, which was launched in 1998 from Tata Motors. Now, other than that, when you talk about JLR, the tie-up over there as well, Tata Motors, British luxury auto sale brand JLR, that they took over in 2008 from Ford Motors, was one of the biggest, acquisitions that we could say of that time, making a lot of difference in terms of the growth story in India, especially in the auto sector. And not only that, his dream was to make cars affordable for the common Indian, that everyone could drive a car, and that dream of his was Tata Nano, which he spearheaded, conceptualized, and that is what he worked towards, the development of Tata Nano, which was a big move that came in. Let's not forget, also moving towards EV is what he focused on, and Tigger electric vehicle is what Tata even came out with later on. December 2012, yes, he retired as a chairman of the Tata Group. But till then, we've seen the growth in Tata Motors. In 1992, when you look at it, the revenue was just merely around 3,200 crores. And by the end of FY13, it was 51,400 crores. So a lot of changes, and spearheading and conceptualizing a lot in the auto sector is what he's worked towards over these years.
Okay, all right, Vinny, thank you very much indeed. What a legacy for Tata Motors. But then perhaps an equally big, if not bigger, legacy at Tata Steel. And we've been discussing this, Nigel, with our guests as well. Really, getting the animal spirits fired up, so to speak, the aggression of corporate India coming to the surface.
Well, that's right. He put India on the global stage, and he joined the Tata Steel Group, which at that point of time was known as Tata Iron and Steel Company. He had gone to the Jamshedpur facility for a training program. So his journey started in 1963. The most notable move that he made was in 2007, when he wanted to put India on the global stage. He won chorus for close to around $12 billion at that point of time. He took the risk, he'd had the appetite, he wanted to take the India steel industry global, and that's what he did. And it was a symbol of India's ascendancy in the global steel environment itself. He tripled Tata Steel's capacity. At that point of time, it was close to around 8 million tons. It went straight to around 28 million tons. And it was a bold move coming in from an Indian conglomerate. On Tata Steel Jamshedpur, he took over the chairmanship in 1993. And the plant capacity at the Jamshedpur unit was close to around 2 million tons. Today, the facility has a capacity of more than 10 million tons odd. He was also responsible for taking Tata Steel out of Jamshedpur. Earlier it was just in Jamshedpur. He went ahead, he had signed an MOU in Odisha in 2004. And now the Kalinganagar facility total capacity is 8 million tons odd. So he took, the Tata Steel brand to other parts of India as well. And human capital is something that we don't talk about very, very often. Society over profitability. Europe went through tough times, but he made sure that the employees were taken care of. Even in India, he took steel making to various interiors where it generated jobs, and it became a source of livelihood for a lot of villagers as well. And finally, the focus on sustainability as well as innovation, various grades, various types of steels is what came about in his tenure as well. So he made bold moves. He, heightened the capacity out there, and he went ahead and he did that big acquisition of Chorus as well in 2007.
You said that the name was Tata Iron and Steel, right?
Yes.
I mean, the old-timers still, actually there are few left now. They still call it Tisco.
Yeah, Tisco.
Tata Steel is, actually when I started, it was always Tisco.
Yeah.
And of course...
so that's why, when I joined as well, 14 years ago, I think Surbi knows what's coming. But when they do well, I said Tisco.
Tisco is doing the disco.
It's going to do the disco. And when they don't perform too well, I said this time they're skipping out the disco. So, for people like us who've been tracking it for 12, 14 years, it still comes to mind as Tisco. So Tata Steel is the listed name.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the other consumer businesses as well, right? Titan and Tata Consumer, and what they've sort of done under Ratan Tata. Mangalam is standing by with a summary of that. Mangalam, over to you.
Well, when we talk about, Tata's ascendancy into the global group, we usually talk about the big acquisitions of Jaguar, Land Rover, and perhaps Chorus as well. All of this was started actually from the consumer space itself when they went ahead and bought the British tea company Tetley itself. But before that, Titan, which was earlier founded by Xerxes Desai and JRD Tata, when Ratan Tata took over the group, Titan was still largely a watch company. In fact, it was India's largest watch company. Ratan Tata was actually, responsible for ensuring that this business went beyond just watches, got into the jewelry space as well, and now watches just account for less than 10% of the overall revenue of Titan, and most of the valuation is derived by the jewelry business itself. And if you look at just the numbers, when he joined Titan, that time as well was not a small company, 155 crore revenue with 11 crore profits in FY92. That in all of, the next 20 years moved all the way up to 10,000 crores with profits jumping all the way up to 725 crores. And add to that, he also created a fair amount of Karigar parks, etc., to improve the working conditions of all those artisans in the jewelry industry. But you speak about the consumer business. Tata's had the Tata Tea. They had a lot of consumer-related agri products as well, but they were lagging Unilever until 2000 itself. But they acquired Tetley in 2000. At that time, that company was 3 times the size of Tata's business, and they paid about 271 million British pounds for that acquisition, and that was the first one that marked the group's ascendancy into the global stage, thereafter setting the stage up for all the other big acquisitions in the other categories that would follow.
Oh, absolutely. And, the disruption on the consumer side continues with so many Tata brands and Tata businesses, of course. And we've been speaking about Trent, I think, all through the last 1 year, which is the one that is really taking the legacy forward. Thanks for that, Mangalam. We do have to take a very quick break. Coming up on the other side, we'll get back to talking with Mitesh. Let's figure out how the market setup is looking like, considering we've sold off from the highs. Back with the specifics in just a bit. Welcome back. So back to the market, and like we've been saying, it's cooled off, but then it's bouncing again. So it's really all over the place. By the way, those visuals coming through, I think The entire procession, the entourage is going to be reaching NCPA, and that's where the mortal remains of Mr. Tata will be kept for the public to pay their last respects. And I think 3:30, there is the memorial service there as well. So yeah, we will soon start seeing a lot of dignitaries troop in, from business leaders to politicians to, of course, noted public personalities and the public at large. Promises to be a very, very big day for the city of Mumbai, for the state of Maharashtra, and obviously for the country as well.
I think that's the first time we are
first
seeing
visuals.
Mr. Tata after he passed in the casket. And I think the body is going to be placed in the NCPA gardens, where it will remain for the public at large, as we said, and of course everyone to be able to pay their respects. So I think that's coming in live right now as we speak.
But you do, Prashant, those are very, very moving images, and you do feel a sense of loss, and dare I say, a sense of personal loss. I mean, many of us don't have a personal connect, but he's a man who really built India and touched our lives in so many ways. All of us as consumers, some of us as perhaps as employees, as shareholders. He really touched one and all.
You know, Surabhi, I was talking to somebody earlier today, and somebody who's actually worked pretty closely with him, and he said that 15th of August, they had around the 15th of August, maybe on the 15th or the 16th, they had a Tata Trust board meeting, and Mr. Tata, and August is not very long back, right? I mean, just a few months back, he was sharp as ever. He was, taking interest in the minutest of details, and at that point, I mean, the person I spoke to said, well, it looked like, I mean, at least we all assumed that, we were planning ahead with him for the next 3, 4, 5 years. So, of course, his condition worsened very quickly, and the last few days he was in the hospital.
No, and that statement that came just a couple of days back, that actually gave a lot of hope. And, one would have wanted to believe that it was all under control, and that, he will, of course, be with us for much, much longer. But unfortunately, that was not to be.
No, absolutely, and someone who's seen India for so long, the entire landscape changing, and of course someone who was right there when India opened up to the world. He took over, of course, in 1992. 91, of course, is when we opened up. Those reforms, those big reforms which happened, and Tata really led from the front in terms of looking at businesses overseas, getting foreign partners in. And of course, took it many steps higher with their big acquisitions, which they did back in 2007. So it's a long journey. It's a lifetime filled with so many important decisions, which have in many ways marked how the economy, how the business world in India has been shaped. So many industries actually, if you think about it, and the role that the Tata Group has played under Mr. Ratan Tata. Really remarkable.
Absolutely, and business with a heart, business with a conscience, and business for the greater good, not just for profits. When these are not just words for a lot of perhaps businessmen out there, these would be just expressions. But Mr. Ratan Tata literally lived by these principles all his life, and he has passed them on to the next generation as well. And I think it's apart from all the achievements on the business front and the financial front, he will be so dearly missed for the human values that he stood for, which, as a lot of guests have told you throughout our conversations this morning, values of humility, the values of integrity, and the value of working for the greater good for the community. The man imbibed them all. He lived by it.
And I think we have Mr. Noel Tata, there overseeing the arrangements right now. He's right there. You can see him on the left side of your screens. I mean, I think the cameras are of course behind where Mr. Tata is, so you can see. But he is there, and maybe we'll be able to show you that. He's there, and he's kind of overseeing all of the arrangements as Mr. Tata's body is put up there, and it'll remain there for the next many hours for people to be able to pay their respects. So we've got, of course, our colleagues there, and our colleagues Yash, Shilpa, and Rachna are there. We'll try and get you reactions as people pour in, business leaders pour in, politicians, and so on and so forth. There you go. You can see Mr. Tata, there and overseeing. He was there at the house as well, the residence as well, early this morning with his family, with his children, and he's there now. So the Indian national flag, the body being wrapped around with that, and those are visuals which are coming in, and sad ones, but a life well lived and a life well remembered.
Absolutely. I mean, the legacy will live on. He's a legend, and he will stay very much alive in the hearts and minds of India, corporate India, boardrooms, and one can only hope that a lot of the teachings, the personal teachings, will sort of stay on with the business leaders and management heads, of course, as well. Of course, it is a day of mourning in Maharashtra. There will be no entertainment activities today. Flags will be flying at half-mast. State mourning obviously has been declared, and 3:30 onwards we're expecting the memorial service, and of course it's open to all to pay their last respects. A tall leader passes on, but leaves us so enriched in many ways beyond just the wealth that his businesses have created.
If we can read out Mr. Venu Srinivasan, the chairman emeritus at TVS Motor, so many tributes have been coming in from late last night when the news broke. And Mr. Srinivasan says, Mr. Tata was truly a remarkable business leader, the likes of whom nations can get only once in a century. His passion extended far beyond growing the Tata Group. It expanded to serving millions of people in India through philanthropic work, to which he devoted as much time and energy as he did to business. He was deeply grounded in values that placed the country before business interests, and his vision was truly transformational for a country and its people. So, it kind of neatly encapsulates, sentiments of so many people, and he was bigger than just merely being a business leader, heading for so many years the largest business group in the country. There you go. You can see Mr. Noel Tata now from the side of his face, as he is actively involved in arrangements at the NCPA grounds at this point in time. Yep, there you go.
And the philanthropy aspect as well, Prashant. I mean, whether it was COVID, whether it was a response of the group immediately after 26/11, and a lot of that, would not even be announced in a big way. It would be revealed, very quietly on the sidelines later. But there was sort of no ceremony around the philanthropic efforts. Towards the later years, he had launched a pilot project to...
I think, Surbhi, we can see Mr. N. Chandrasekharan as well.
Yeah.
He was there. So that's, of course, Mr. Noel Tata paying his respects. But I think we just saw Mr. Chandrasekharan. There you go.
Yeah,
now appearing in interview, paying his last respects as well. There you go. That's Mr. Chandra. N. Chandrasekharan, current chairman at TCS, someone, of course, who headed TCS and who was picked by Mr. Ratan Tata to head the group, a few years ago. So the entire top Tata community, Tata group personnel, people, of course, who've been not just with the group, but with not just with operating groups and operating subsidiaries, but people at the Tata Sons level, and of course Tata Trusts level as well. I think you can see a lot of faces there who are all gathered. I think I can see Mr. Srinivasan is there, or lots of familiar faces, of course. Some with the group, some, of course, in the business fraternity, all gathering to pay their respects.
Absolutely. I think I saw Mr. Narendran as well at some point in the crowd. So yes, all the top group leaders from the group companies coming through. And we remember, the Tata's name becoming synonymous with trust across businesses, across enterprises, whether it is, brick and mortar businesses, whether it's services. Trust, building that sort of equity capital is something that doesn't come easy to a lot of businesses. And perhaps that pulled in directly from personal conduct, led by, the man right at the helm, right at the top, which is, of course, Mr. Ratan Tata. And perhaps that is why, just in stature, grace, he just grew from strength to strength, a very, very tall figure for India and, of course, for Indian business as well. By the way, today it's just coincidence, today we also have group company TCS's numbers, and if you're wondering, like a lot of us were in the night, the numbers will be released. But of course, the press conference has been sort of cut out. That will not be happening. There is an investor call. TCS will go forward with its earnings release and the investor call. But of course, the interviews will have to wait.
I mean, Surbhi, as you said, right, I mean, the philanthropic efforts through... I mean, Mr. Tata actually gave away much of his wealth through Tata Trusts. And the funding went to education, healthcare, rural development across the country, cancer care. I mean, the Tata Hospital here in Mumbai, reminds us every day of the efforts of the Tata Group in that regard. Clean water access, education in remote areas. I mean, I think there were very few areas where help was needed of the private sector, and the Tata was not there. I mean, I think Tata's very much behind the scenes, quietly doing the work, and they've been doing for a long, long time. Mr. Tata, of course, himself received countless accolades. So in 2008, the government awarded him the Padma Vibhushan, the country's second highest civilian honor. And of course, his global contributions earned him a knighthood in the UK, recognition from various governments worldwide, and so on and so forth. So, he was not just sort of a leader here, but recognized globally for his efforts, both on the business side and, of course, on the philanthropic side as well.
Yeah, I was just reading up on his early years in terms of schooling and college as well. So he went to 3 very prestigious key institutions in India, which was Campion School, Cathedral, and John Connon. He was also at Bishop Cotton in Shimla. And some of his sort of early schoolmates included very notable figures. Of course, music maestro Zubin Mehta. There were the names like Ashok Birla and even Mr. Rahul Bajaj. So, yeah, these were legends in their own spheres. And, that was a different time, different era, different India. And from there, he steered the Tata Group, India Inc., and, of course, the country into a brand new era of ambition in the early 90s, and taking that a step forward in the 2000s with those big marquee acquisitions that sort of he inspired his group companies to do. And also, perhaps, if you talk to a lot of the different group CEOs, whether it's Titan, Tata Steel, or TCS under Mr. N. Chandrasekharan, they all sort of tell stories about how the brand value and ethos was super strong, and the core always had to be strong. But a fair amount of course, innovation and fair amount of sort of experimentation, perhaps, at the individual business level, and that kind of leeway also being given out, because each of these individual companies, of course, have gone on to become multi-billion-dollar enterprises, generating a lot of investor wealth in the process.
You spoke about some of the. I think we've got more dignitaries there, business leaders there, sort of lining up to pay their respects, and we will stay with those visuals as we get you sort of some of this through the course of the day. So yeah, I mean, a great leader, and people, of course, sad, but also, of course, in a way, celebrating his life and what he's done for the country, and of course, learning from him. And that is also very much part of this somber day as we look at this. I think we have Mr. Rajiv Bajaj now joining us. If you can go across to him, he's Managing Director at Bajaj Auto. Mr. Bajaj, good morning. Good to have you with us here.
Good morning.
We'll be reading over those pictures as people sort of are there to pay their last respects. But Mr. Bajaj, how would you remember Mr. Tata, and what would you like to share with us?
Good morning, Prashant. Well, obviously, like everybody else, I feel extremely saddened. In my case, there is a little bit of a personal angle to it for 2 reasons. One, Mr. Tata and my father were classmates at the Cathedral School in Mumbai. And secondly, in my 35 years of work life, I have basically worked in just one company, Bajaj Auto, for 34 of those 35 years. But the whole year, I had the good fortune of spending at Tata Motors here in Pune. So I was, in that sense, prepared for Bajaj Auto by Tata Motors.
Rajiv, that's a very interesting insight. And actually, talk to us more. We were just discussing this. I was just looking at Mr. Ratan Tata's early life, and that he shared the classroom space with the likes of your father. Any anecdotes, any memories from your early years? Seeing the two visionaries together, or perhaps if you could recall what your father spoke to you about when it came to the House of Tatas.
Well, I'll tell you a little story, Surbhi. I've met Mr. Tata obviously fleetingly many a times, but in depth once, I think about 15 years back, sometime in 2008, 2009. This is the time when Tatas were contemplating making the Nano, and I was thinking about our quadricycle, the Qute. And something just inspired me to go across and meet a potential competitor who was my father's age. I sought a meeting. I was granted one. I went to Tata House one evening at about 4 o'clock. And I must share with you what happened there. I waited for him in his office. And when he came to me, for the first 10 minutes, all he did was vent, actually. He told me one by one about 15 instances all through school when my father had bullied him on different occasions. And in the classroom, even in the bathroom, and I was just speechless. I didn't know what to do, and I have to this date carried a diary to schedule my day for every year. So I made a careful note of all that in my diary, and all my 35 diaries are with me in my office, so I'm sure I can still find my notings in this regard. So I wrote all this down, and when I came back, I sat in front of my father and I said to him, this is what Mr. Tata says about you. And my father said, oh, how my father was. He just waved his hand and he said, this is all rubbish or something to that effect. But I told him word for word, and the actual words Mr. Tata had used were the exact words that my father, that typical of my father. So I knew that Mr. Tata was 100% correct, and he was remembering this after 60 years. So that has always stayed with me. Other than that, two quick points. One, he then asked me about my work, and when he talked about the Nano, he said that the Tatas had actually benchmarked the Bajaj auto rickshaw, particularly its engine, when the project started. And I said to him, sir, let's do this together. And he said, yeah, I'm open to it. Let me talk to my people. I'll come back to you. That was one. And the second was, the silver tray that he brought out, the coffee, the slice of cake at 4 o'clock in the evening. And he was in between two board meetings. He walked me to the elevator, waited there till the doors shut. Now, if you put these three things together and connect these dots, whether it was the memories from childhood, whether it was the hospitality, or whether it was the openness to work together, I think it tells me one thing about the person. He was a very, very sensitive man, a man of extraordinary sensitivity. And I think the world needs more people like that who are sensitive to everything that happens around them.
Rajiv, one can really hope that people across spectrum are really listening to the anecdotes that you're sharing, and many others, including Mr. Parekh. I think that fact about humility has really come through from all the messages and all the conversations that we've had. And one hopes that not just business leaders, whether it's millennials or Gen Z, entrepreneurs, everybody takes this message in and tries to imbibe it at least a little bit. Rajiv, in fact, talk to us more about the two very contrasting personalities. It's so good that you've taken this call. Because on one hand, and I remember the last time we had these emotions pour out, it was actually at the very unfortunate passing away of Mr. Rahul Bajaj. Two very contrasting personalities, one who's shy, sort of staying away from the limelight, not speaking much in public, and the other who really spoke his mind. And both of them have made such huge contribution to this country. So how do you see these contrasting personalities? And, personally, where do you place yourself? And what would your message be in terms of just personal conduct for entrepreneurs and business leaders?
Well, I guess, one of my favorite quotes, Survi, is that of the physicist Niels Bohr, who said, the opposite of a truth is another profound truth. And I think if we internalize that thought, we would realize that there is no need to always judge what is right, what is wrong, what is better, what is worse. We must simply accept that the world is full of polarities. And I think in that sense, as you observe, Mr. Tata and my father were in a way polar opposites. But let me also tell you, under Mr. Tata's very private and demure self, as I saw it, I also saw a very determined, steely personality. And I can tell you equally, under my father's outwardly, gregarious and outspoken self, there was a very soft and emotional side to him within that. And I think this is true of all of us. So I think if we bear in mind that we live in a world of polarities, there will be far greater tolerance in the world, and we need that as much as we need sensitivity.
No, that's so beautifully put. By the way, the visuals are still pouring in. You can see Mr. Noel Tata there, very much meeting people who are coming in. I saw some politicians there as well. Mr. Praful Patel was there, and some of the other NCP leaders, etc., also behind him. Rajiv, if I can, so let's just talk a little bit of business in that sense now. For someone to have run that and for such a long time, industrial group like the Tatas, I mean, I assume capital allocation across businesses perhaps is top of mind. And that is such an important function, is also such a heavy responsibility. But he did make big, bold bets, right? I mean, he went overseas in a really big way from India Inc. back in 2007-8 with his acquisitions in steel and, of course, autos as well. What are your thoughts in that regard, and any learnings in that sense? You did just now mention that he was determined in what he did, although he was, of course, polite and compassionate and all of that. But what would your learnings be in that sense?
Well, I'd make 2 points, I suppose, Prashant. On a specific note, I would say that there is no doubt that what Mr. Tata did with JLR and Tata Steel at that time inspired a lot of us. And it's no secret that, when we set off on our partnership, first with KTM and then with Triumph over the next years, after he had done what he did, that certainly served to kind of embolden, inspire us, give us confidence, that, we can also do it kind of thing. And, we can also be global brands and play on the world stage. So there is no doubt, I think, in my mind that that definitely inspired us, as I'm sure it did so many others. And then there is also, the general point I would make, that I would say for myself, that I'm a person, I believe, who is much more, let's say, adept with the depth than with width. And what I mean by that is that, I can do only one thing at a time, really. As I said in the beginning, I have spent 34 or 35 years at Bajaj Auto, just focused on one thing in some detail. But to handle multiple things equally adeptly is really beyond my capability, frankly. And some people, are good with scale, but they're not necessarily good with depth and excellence. I think what you see in Mr. Tata is a person, who was master of both excellence and scale. And he demonstrated that, as you said, across the spectrum of activities and across decades. So what better role model can there be for all of us going into the future than this example?
Rajiv, finally, just some thoughts on trust. And you were discussing this earlier, that the house of Tatas, became synonymous with trust. It didn't matter which Tata brand you were, looking at, or whether you were buying Tata Salt, or whether you were looking at, investing in the financial services business through them. So when you talk about trust, what is your read-through? I mean, how is it built? How can a business house preserve it and make it last in such a durable way?
Well, it's obviously built over a long time. It's built by action and not just by words. And, I would entirely endorse what you said, Surbhi, that, when you walk the talk repeatedly. I give you a very small example of when I was at Tata Motors, and we heard that Mr. Ratan was visiting one day, and a proposal was placed before him that, like the Japanese would do, Tata Motors should have one common canteen where managers and workers would both eat, so as to build like a common culture. Now, I guess this is one of those things that builds trust in an organization. When he was taken around and he was this idea was proposed to him, I'm told Mr. Tata said, "Oh, that's a wonderful idea, to have everyone in the same place, eating the same food, etc., and build that brotherhood. But please do take care that you elevate